All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am Death to the New World Order, coming to you this Monday after the Stupor Bowl, as coined by Mark Dice. And I'm not going to address that too much. I know Alex was going on about it. I don't watch that trash, so we are going to be focusing on something specific tonight. We're going to look at a variety of news and other issues. And then we're going to get to our main topic, which is, I went to the Mexican restaurant like I do almost every night before I go on air. And I'm sitting there with my fajitas, and I've been building a network. As some of you will notice, there's, you can comment using Facebook now. You don't have to, I think, you don't have to sign up for the network in order to leave comments. I mean, I'm trying. Hopefully it works that way now. And I'm like, what am I going to talk about tonight? I almost live in two worlds, in one world where I'm like the engineer building the network, modifying the network. And then when Monday rolls around, all of a sudden I'm the researcher, I'm the broadcaster. So I started thinking, long term, I started thinking about the big picture. And the more I thought about it, the more this whole, and I see Piers Morgan is, having another incident with Alex Jones. I don't know. We're going to check that out on air. I've got the video. Or we will have in a moment, where Piers Morgan has gone somewhere into Texas and Alex Jones rushed over there. We'll check it out. But I'm thinking about the big picture here, and the more you think about what's going on, the more it resembles a hostage crisis, okay? If, for instance, and there's actually one going on right now. There's a guy, or at least as of, I believe it was yesterday I read, you may remember a couple days ago, somebody went onto a school bus, shot the bus driver, and snatched a little boy and took him hostage. And then that kind of went out of the headlines. But it was still going on as of last night. It was in its third or going on fourth day. And they're actually in an underground bunker on the man's property, is what I'm hearing. And they're talking to the police through like a PVC pipe or something that the guy ran up. I don't know all the details. I just kind of briefly read it. The police are not cutting off the electricity, and there are hostage negotiations, of course, going on. And I'm looking also at a federal government controlled by the New World Order trying to hostage negotiate with the American people and get them to lay down their guns. The parallels cannot be denied. You have a control structure engaged in hostage negotiations, and that's what's going on here. I mean, there's cameras going up everywhere. You're living in a giant outdoor prison. You're a hostage. And the prison guards are trying to negotiate with you and get you to put down your guns, to give up your guns. That's what we're looking at. And there's an added complexity here in that most, or at least a significant percentage of the prisoners have Stockholm syndrome. So we're going to be looking in some detail now of what is a hostage negotiation. What are hostage negotiators taught, trained? How do they go about it? And we're going to see a lot of parallels between what a hostage negotiator does and what our government is doing right now to disarm the American people. We're also going to look at Stockholm Syndrome, and we're going to see that explains a lot of the rhetoric coming from the people who are okay with giving up their guns. So when we get to that portion of the broadcast, I'm sure there are going to be some pretty interesting points that are going to be made, not just by me, but just by looking into the information. Frankly, somebody could hit stop on the broadcast and go do their own research into hostage negotiations, Stockholm Syndrome, and they would make most or all of the connections themselves. But I'm going to do it here live on air. Now, we are going to look at some news first. So let's go on screen. And unfortunately, I just got into the office. Oh, I'm not even going to go into this. All right, I'll just briefly mention it, because apparently somebody has found a photo, allegedly, of Gene Rosen wearing a FEMA hat involved in some sort of drill somewhere. So I'll tell you what I'll do. is I will drop the link for this in the chat, and you guys can make what you want of it, because I don't know for sure that that's Gene Rosen. There's a 5-year difference, and that picture is allegedly 2008. I don't know if that's Gene Rosen, and so I'll drop the link in the chat. Let me open it up in this computer, and then you guys can look at it. And I don't want, obviously wild out there conspiracy theorizing, but I mean, if I come across something like this, I'm going to give it to you, even if I don't have time to look into it. I'm not saying it is Gene Rosen. I'm saying it looks like him, and others are saying that it is him, and you make up your own mind. That's all I'm saying. So here's the link. And meanwhile, I'm going to have to go to my Facebook, where I've posted some of the things that I want to put in the broadcast, as far as covering just some things that are going on right now. And I'll go to my wall, and I should go ahead and put on some Payday Monsanto while I download the videos, because you need some background music or something, right? Even though it's probably going to get cut out of the broadcast. I better not. They keep blocking my broadcasts because of copyright. So we'll just go to my wall, grab the videos. They should download very quickly. And then we will be viewing them, discussing them, and then moving on to the main topic. So here is Alex Jones, Piers Morgan, round 2. Let's snatch that. Or we could just watch it. Let's just watch it from YouTube. It'd be quicker that way. So let's just line this up and play it. All right, here we go.
Hey, how are you, mate?
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. You good?
Yeah, I hope you have me back on.
I hear you're a big customer here.
Oh, no, but some of my listeners are. They say it's the best around here.
Yeah. You good? Are you enjoying Global Fame?
Oh, well, I already had quite a few listeners, but no, it certainly went viral.
Yeah.
That's why we should do another interview.
We might do.
And
My ears haven't recovered yet.
do what?
My ears haven't recovered.
Well, it was good that I had a fever and was actually sick. That's why I was sweating. I mean, I almost didn't come because of that, but I said I'd do it, and that's kind of why I got. I didn't blow up on purpose. I thought it turned out as, good for people to think about the debate.
Sure, no, I wasn't talking. No problem with that.
Are you guys going live tonight?
Most of it, yeah. Maybe a couple of pre-records, but most of it's live.
Are you going to have me back on?
I don't want to promote you that much, Alex.
I know, exactly. But I thought you won the debate, though. You were saying it was the best interview ever.
You said on your Twitter you wanted to shake my hand and have a civilized conversation. Here we are.
All right.
Good to see you
We
again.
just had a civilized conversation.
I've had very civilized conversations in Texas since I've been here.
All right, well, good. We'll see. We just had a friendly talk right there.
Good to see you again.
All right, good seeing you. Good luck with the show.
Take care.
Good to see you guys. Okay, so how about we do this? Since we're going to be shooting, do you mind?
Okay, so not much to this, obviously.
We're not part of the segment, we can just clear.
Yeah, I'll just step right back here.
It's totally fine.
Right.
Not during the segment,
But
though.
we can't have it
Yeah,
filmed.
yeah, we can't have it.
Alex.
So still shots,
Well,
sir.
Because we're doing it live tonight. We don't want
Okay, well, that's fine. It's just the owner who told me that. I thought you guys are live tonight.
We are, but we're just taping this. But
Okay.
I want to can we just do this after?
Oh, that's right. Are you a CNN guy? Oh, that's what I thought. Where's Jeremy, the owner? He was real nice to talk to him on the phone.
Right there.
Okay, great. Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
But do you mind? Sorry, we got to get out of it.
This is okay. I understand.
We
This
can
is like
talk-
Obama shooting the shotgun.
But we can talk right after.
Now you're going to make everybody think you're pro-gun
Thank you much.
because you lost the debate. I won. You're scared to have me back on, Pierce.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So, I mean, like I say, I've met Alex. Let me turn my thing down here. Like I say, I've met Alex Jones, and he comes off as a real guy. That's why, obviously, I don't want to believe any of the stuff about he's controlled. He gets Israeli intelligence from Stratfor. I'm not going to go into it all. I want to believe he's legit. He came off as legit right there, but I don't know. So there that was. That's all that amounts to. We're done looking at that. I'll just play these straight off of YouTube for the sake of doing it quicker. Yeah, we got something interesting here that we have to show. And this is a letter from Ron Paul. You can barely read it here. Maybe I need to enlarging this window, and I guess I can't zoom in on it anymore. This is a letter from Rand Paul, I'm sorry, about chemtrails. Oh, we're not even on screen, sorry. Here we go. And you can see it says, "Thank you for contacting my office about chemtrails. I appreciate hearing your thoughts on the issue. Evidence suggests the phenomena sometimes referred to as chemtrails are simply condensation formed in the wake of jet aircraft, which may remain visible in the sky for long periods of time given favorable atmospheric conditions. Again, thank you for contacting me. It's an honor and privilege to represent the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the United States Senate. Please continue to inform me of thoughts you may have on federal legislative issues." So Rand Paul, and let me move this down so you can see his signature, essentially dismissive on the issue of chemtrails. Make of it what you will. I think Rand Paul is an issue in and of himself. I mean, we hear people time to time saying Rand Paul should run for president, but he stabbed his dad in the back and defeated any chance he had of running. And I think anybody that puts any faith in the political system is going to get exactly what, they ask for, another ruler. But anyway, I think that letter is very significant in its importance because it does show point blank Rand Paul saying there's no such thing as chemtrails. Period. End of story. So I don't think anybody should be blindly following anyone. Interestingly, I also got on the same day, at the same time, this from the Minister of the Environment. And this would be in the UK, I guess. And we'll just go through this a little bit at a time. January 23rd, 2013. And I want to scroll that up, but I can't, so I'll just move this down. Mr. Edward Powell. Dear Mr. Powell, the Office of the Honorable Rob Nicholson, Ministry of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, has sent me your email message of November 4, 2012 regarding the Weather Modification Act. Now, I think that anyone doing, for instance, a Freedom of Information request, a FOIA request, shouldn't even use the term chemtrails, but should talk about weather modification, should talk about, the company, the corporation called Evergreen. In other words, dig in deep enough to the information to say something besides, hey, what do you know about chemtrails? That's lame, okay? And if they had asked specifically of Rand Paul about the company called Evergreen and any contracts it has with the government, they probably would have got something back. And that's what this person did. They asked about the Weather Modification Information Act. I note your request for information on atmospheric aerosol spraying in Canadian skies of metallic and or chemical particulates for the purpose of weather modification. It is not possible for Environment Canada or any other federal department to provide you with a complete list of what can be sprayed or released into the sky or atmosphere. That is because many departments, both federal and provincial, may have regulations that seek to limit certain releases into the atmosphere or permit certain releases in particular circumstances. For example, some substances which may cause harm to the environment may be prohibited from release entirely, while other substances may be subject to a permitting scheme for particular purposes. Municipalities also have zoning and bylaws that prevent particular release. However, as you requested, I'm attaching copies of the records on who has sprayed what and where since 1999. I trust this information is helpful and extend my best wishes. Sincerely, so-and-so, the Honorable Peter Kent, PC, MP, whatever that means, that's in Canada. And we need to go back to my wall here. And okay, this is actually being covered on the network, so you can hit it. That's some Sandy Hook stuff. Of course, we know everybody send that around. Maybe we should just go ahead and get to our main topic. So we need to download some clips from YouTube on hostage negotiation and Stockholm Syndrome. I remember a while ago, I did an entire broadcast on Stockholm Syndrome And I explained that the American sheeple, in fact, have Stockholm Syndrome. They have been abused. They have been taken advantage of for such a prolonged period of time. And this is the essence of what Stockholm Syndrome is. And if I remember right, this came up in relation to Charlie Veitch. And it was before he did his, whatever he did, came out and saying he was working for the Illuminati or something, I don't know. But what it was about, okay, look, I'm pretty anti-government. And I see pictures going around of these quote-unquote love police. And not only are they, for instance, trying to hug cops. There was one video in particular in which Charlie Veitch was directing other people to go up and hug the police. And I was infuriated. We're talking about riot police, whose job it is to essentially beat you down for speaking your mind. So I decided, okay, what is this guy doing? What is the purpose of this? And I probably thought about it for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I realized this is Stockholm Syndrome. He is teaching people to love their oppressors. And it's not enough for the love police to do it. They have to teach other people to do it. And that's why Veitch would go up to regular people and tell them to hug the police. That is teaching Stockholm Syndrome, teaching people to love their oppressors. That is the game that they're playing. It is psychological manipulation, and it's admirable for how brazen it is, and I'm excruciatingly disappointed in the rest of the population for falling for it. But of course, they're probably targeting sheeple who have no clue why they're even doing it. I mean, let's face it, half of the population now, you could walk up and tell them to do whatever you wanted and they just do it. They're barely even thinking. And that's what they were doing. So when I realized that he was deliberately spreading Stockholm Syndrome, I went on the attack. And of course, that broadcast has been removed from the internet. Perhaps I'll play it when I'm done tonight, but that really interferes with my post-production. But that's what they're doing. They're spreading Stockholm Syndrome. And once you get Stockholm Syndrome spread sufficiently, and this is the twist, okay? Normally, in a hostage negotiation, you have a kidnapper or somebody who has a hostage, and you're negotiating with the kidnapper. What's going on right now in America is a little bit different in that the people they're negotiating with, by and large, are the people who have been kidnapped. It is the people who have Stockholm Syndrome. So let's think about this for a moment and what the implications of it are. Normally, in any hostage situation, they negotiate with the hostage taker. In our situation here and now in America, where they're trying to disarm the population, they're negotiating both with the hostage taker, and that would be, for instance, hold on, I'm getting confused now. Okay, it's like they got two kinds of hostages. They have a hostage who hates the hostage taker and a hostage who's like, I think they're okay. And they're negotiating with the hostages. They are the hostage taker. I almost have to draw this out. The New World Order controlling your federal government is holding you prisoner, is negotiating with you to get you to put down your guns. And we're going to look at a few videos on hostage negotiation. And when we do, I believe that you're going to see startling similarities between how people are trained to negotiate with hostages and how your government right now is psychologically manipulating you to give up your guns. So let's go on screen, hit YouTube, and bring in a couple videos for this broadcast. We will put hostage negotiation training. And This guy here looks like he knows what he's talking about. And again, if you want to download YouTube clips, use ATube Catcher. It's an essential tool everyone must have, especially if you're going to broadcast on the network. And we are still recruiting broadcasters. I need to get tutorials up because I don't have time to train everybody to do everything, and it's killing me training people to do what they're doing. I need to get videos up, and then, frankly, the way it's going to work on the network, and I did put a new policy statement out. Let me expand you out. If you look on the network, under network, there's Truth Broadcast Network policy. And essentially, the policy is, if you're too stupid or too lazy to watch the tutorial videos, you're not going to be on the network because I don't have time to teach everybody everything. I'm sorry. That's just the way that it is. Now let's look. Here's a short one. It's only 2 minutes. There's a ethics of hostage negotiation. I bet you that one goes pretty in depth. We better grab it. And then we're also going to need some video on Stockholm Syndrome. Some of you may remember, for instance, Patty Hearst. Remember, she was robbing a bank with, I believe it was SLA, alleged terrorist organization. Nowadays, it's hard to even know who's a terrorist organization and who's not because the good guys are generally called terrorists. So the mystery of why would Patty Hearst side with her kidnappers might be that they were the good guys. But anyway, I guess she was some rich heiress or something. So we'll probably look at that as well. And I think there was even a song made about it because, again, I did a broadcast on Stockholm Syndrome. I played the footage of her robbing the bank. There was a song made about it. I played that song on the broadcast. And I think this was uploaded to YouTube before they got so good at the copyright, scanning for copyright. You know what I mean? So let's see. Most of the stuff on Stockholm Syndrome appears to be music, which isn't going to do us any good at all. So maybe we better throw Patty Hearst's name in there. P-A-T-T-Y. Patty Hearst. There it is. And we'll get a little bit of information on that. And then, if it comes down to it, what I might do is play my old broadcast for the second hour. All right, here's a short clip. Take that, ATube Catcher. Oh, we're still downloading. The other thing about ATube Catcher, you can open multiple instances of the program. Need to update it, but it'll work. And I apologize for having to do this, what should have been done before I went on air, but there's a lot going on right now. My birth dad is, I guess, dying of cancer, and I barely know him, so no reason to be upset, but, you know, my sister's calling me all the time saying I need to go visit him. I'll try and get that done tomorrow. Kind of interesting, and I should probably... I can talk about this for a minute, especially as we're trying to download things, but I was adopted from a very young age. I was removed from the home of my birth parents. And this was, I was always told, because they were doing drugs. And as I was an adult and I come to find out, you know, okay, one of my brothers comes to me and says, oh, hey, you know, we found our dad. Turns out he was mafia, big time mafia hitman. And obviously anybody in the mafia is going to be involved in the drug trade. So that's what was going on there. And when I met him, he was 70-something and still very healthy. And he's tall like me. He's extremely, extremely intelligent. When I went over to his house, he was running 3 televisions, the radio, and playing a video game. And I'm the same way. I multitask. I mean, I feel bad. I go to church and I'm listening to the sermon, but I'm also working on the website on the tablet computer. I always have the Bluetooth in my ear, researching while I'm talking to my wife, while we're out on a date, you know. I don't know if you call it a date after you're married, but while we go out, you know, it's like I'm paying attention to her, I'm talking to her, but I'm also listening to Alan Watt or something. I was born with a very good CPU. I inherited extremely good genetics. So I guess I'll visit him before he passes on. I mean, you can't not do that. And then that'll be it, because my birth mother, I guess, committed suicide at a younger age. And I think that that was because she had the seizures that I have. And I made it through that, and it made me a much stronger person. But I know your average person would have checked out. Okay, the ordeal of Patty Hearst. It's a little long, and this isn't all about Patty Hearst. It's about Stockholm Syndrome, so we need something specific to that. Let's try what is Stockholm Syndrome and take her name out of it. I could just put in D2NWO Stockholm Syndrome 5 Mile Broadcast on here if they didn't delete the channel. It's almost like they don't want people to know what it is. I mean, I see this time and time again. They don't want you to know what the New World Order is, so they make a wrestling federation called New World Order. They don't want you to know what Stockholm Syndrome is, so there's songs and there's music groups called Stockholm Syndrome. I'm not saying it's the case, but half the time you try to find something, it must be, you know, very educational. Okay, unions have Stockholm Syndrome. Good God. Maybe I'll just have to get a website. And yeah, why should I play videos for everything? We'll just go to Google and put it in there. And what I would like to do actually, though, is also get some stuff off of YouTube in relation to the Love Police. In fact, let's see if anybody else made that connection after I did. So, Love Police, Stockholm Syndrome. It still comes up. But no, it doesn't look like anybody has picked this up yet and ran with it. Very disappointing. You know, I don't have a great memory, so I forget so many of the important things I put out there. But I'll usually see it crop up later. Like I said the other day, the term black psychology, the understanding that it is a dark art, is starting to creep up in the alternative broadcasters. I'm starting to hear them use that terminology. But the fact that everybody has Stockholm Syndrome, that the Love Police is spreading Stockholm Syndrome, that's not getting out there yet, unfortunately. So let's just look at Love Police, look at what they're doing, and compare it to the definition of Stockholm Syndrome. And, you know, I mean, I agree, Charlie Veach does put out videos exposing the false reality and stuff like that. I've seen one or two. I don't pay attention to his work. But when the overriding theme of his whatever, organization or whatever, is go up and hug your oppressor, they're still going to do their job. They're still going to tase you. They're still going to beat you. They're still going to follow orders because they have to put food on their family, as George Bush says. So let's try Love Police hugging. We better just get something rolling here. Otherwise, I'm going to have to start editing this video before I can do post-production. Okay, here's one. Now. And we'll go ahead and download that one. I want to present the definition before we roll the video so that people can see it for what it really is. So let's go to the definition of Stockholm Syndrome. Here we have a page. What is Stockholm Syndrome? And let's zoom in a little bit. What is Stockholm Syndrome? Stockholm Syndrome describes the behavior of kidnap victims who over time become sympathetic to their captors. The name derives from the 1973 hostage incident in Stockholm, Sweden. At the end of 6 days of captivity in a bank, several kidnap victims actually resisted rescue attempts and afterwards refused to testify against their captors. While some people are suggesting the recent Elizabeth Smart kidnapping, oh, That's what we want. What was that little girl, that little blonde girl that was kidnapped and held for like 9 years? JC Dugard or something like that. Can you guys remember? JC Dugard or something. Okay, anyway. While some people suggest the recent Elizabeth Smart kidnapping sounds like a case of Stockholm Syndrome, the most famous incident in the United States involved the kidnapping heiress Patty Hearst. Captured by a radical political group known as the Symbionese Liberation Army, or SLA, in 1974, Miss Hearst eventually became an accomplice of the group, taking on an assumed name and assisting them in several bank robberies. After her recapture, she denounced the group and her involvement. What causes Stockholm Syndrome? Captives begin to identify with their captors initially as a defense mechanism out of fear of violence. Small acts of kindness by the captor are magnified since finding perspective in a hostage situation is by definition impossible. Rescue attempts are also seen as a threat since it's likely the captive would be injured during such attempts. It's important to note that these symptoms occur under tremendous emotional and often physical duress. The behavior is considered a common survival strategy for victims of intrapersonal abuse and has been observed in battered spouses, abused children, prisoners of war, and concentration camp survivors. So that is the working definition of Stockholm Syndrome. I think that in some cases, if not many cases, you could have an alternative explanation, such as, well, the truth is that the person who captured me was extremely desperate. He is being, demonized for the wrong reasons. Let's say the SLA. Well, what were they fighting for? Let's check it out. The Symbionese Liberation Army. Oh, that page doesn't exist. Wonderful. Anyway, it is said that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And she, Patty Hearst, obviously came to see them as freedom fighters because she was fighting alongside of them and helping them rob banks. Is this logical in the definition of Stockholm Syndrome? No, it's not. But it makes perfect sense if you come to see that, well, hey, Patty Hearst was a rich heiress and she sympathized with these poor, desperate people who were just trying to help other people. It's the Liberation Army. Liberty. But we're not going to get into that argument. Now that you understand what Stockholm Syndrome is, how does it apply to the love police? Well, what would be the most blatant example of Stockholm Syndrome when you consider that the entire nation has been hijacked, bankrupted, robbed. We've been robbed blind. And the worse the tyranny gets, the more they have to count on their pawns, or as they call them, their dogs. They call them their dogs. The police and the military, to stand guard around their federal building, to stand guard on their street corners in Washington, D.C. or New York or wherever, around a Super Bowl, around the Olympics. Their dogs are everywhere. And what can you do to engender Stockholm Syndrome in the American sheeple? You can create an affection towards their dogs, an affection towards the police and the military. The most basic explanation of Stockholm Syndrome is that you are happy, or you are momentarily unafraid because you're not being beaten at this moment. A kidnap victim comes to see the times where they're not being abused, the times where their life is not being threatened, as good times. So in other words, well, yeah, the jackbooted thugs are standing all around, and they got riot gear and police batons and tasers, and they can beat us and tase us and everything else. But hey, look, they're just standing there. So you develop an affection towards them because they're not beating you at the moment. That's Stockholm Syndrome. That is the very definition of Stockholm Syndrome. To have an affectionate feeling towards your oppressor because they're not beating you at this particular moment. Now let's look at this video by the Love Police, which I guess I downloaded it. All right, let's dig it up. There it is. Open with Power Director, and now it'll be in here. And let's focus in on this area and see if we see any evidence of Stockholm Syndrome coming out of the Love Police.
Now, I am a spokesman for the government, and I have a message. Love is a natural resource. We will run out. Therefore, please conserve as much love as possible, and we will tax you on that love, just like everything else. So please, if you want a hug today, make sure you pay the federal government, as they own all of your hug and your love. You are not free spiritual creatures placed on this earth to gain a higher consciousness.
I have seen a lot of hugs being given out today. A lot of hugs from strangers. And I tell you, there is nothing more fulfilling in life than watching strangers, people that would have normally never talked to one another, sharing.
Okay, I don't even know if the police are in this one, so I'm just going to scan through it. And they're not. So that video is no good for making the point that I'm trying to make here. But I'll bet you we'll pull up one here that will be good. Copy the link, go to ATube, Catcher, right click, paste, download. And in the meantime, we should go ahead and throw on another video. So go to YouTube Downloads, Stockholm Syndrome, Episode 1. Good. We need more on Stockholm Syndrome so that people understand why we're showing the Love Police. So let's roll this video first.
It is probably the mystery story of the 20th century, and it finally unfolded today. One version of it.
Combat unit that's armed with automatic weapons. And these people aren't just a bunch of nuts. They've been really honest with me that they're perfectly willing to die for what they're doing. The SLA has declared war against the government. They have nothing to do with the August 7th movement. That they've not been shooting down helicopters or shooting down innocent people in the streets. I'm kept blindfolded, usually so that I can't identify anyone. My hands are often tied. I just hope that you'll do what they say, Dad. Just do it quickly. And this is a warning to everybody.
Wonderful. Nobody made any kind of point during that video.
And it's also to show what can be done when it's necessary.
See, this is the problem that we have, in that people upload stuff and they make no point. They don't say anything. Even a lot of these things, they just type shit. But they're not connecting any of the freaking dots. Nothing. It's very frustrating to be somebody who understands this kind of thing and look the entire world, every web page, every YouTube clip, and there's nothing. And the one I had on there is gone. I haven't had any caffeine, and I'm not going to lose it on air. I'm going to try not to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my old broadcasts back up there. So that's the one we tried to play that was no good, I think. That's the one we played that was absolute crap. Let's go to the ethics of hostage negotiation. We're going to bounce back and forth between these two topics. This is a significantly long video. I want you to bear in mind while we're watching this that what we are actually talking about as far as who is the hostage is the American people. And the negotiation is about giving up your guns, giving up your rights, giving up your freedom, letting them block the internet, block your speech. And the hostage taker is, of course, your government controlled by the New World Order. But this video will present it all the way they want you to see things, okay? It's just like a horror movie, like Psycho, where, you know, you are led to believe that a psychopath is one person with one knife killing a woman in a shower. That's what a psychopath is. This is to guide you away from the realization that the psychopaths are actually everywhere. Most of them wear suits and kill thousands, millions of people. Henry Kissinger is one of the world's biggest psychopaths. Designs and engineers wars, causes them to spill over national boundaries, and creates genocide. That's a psychopath. All right, let's check out the video, see where it goes.
Welcome to Inner Compass. I'm Shirley Hoekstra. We've read those stories. The angry criminal takes a hostage and demands to speak with authorities. So who should take the phone? And what would you say to someone like David Koresh? Well, today we're going to be talking to an FBI agent who's negotiated some of the most notorious hostages.
Wow, well, I can see this is going to be interesting because she just said David Koresh was a hostage taker. Wow. I'm going to try and let this play, but I mean, I got to point out the ridiculous points.
Hostage situations of the century. Join us on Inner Compass.
From the campus of Calvin College, this is Inner Compass, exploring how people use faith and ethics to guide them through critical issues of today.
My guest today is Jim Bodding, who worked for years as a hostage negotiator for the FBI. And he is the author of Bullets, Bombs, and Fast Talk, 25 years of FBI war stories. Hi, Jim.
Good morning.
It's great to have you here. How did you go from a college graduate into the FBI?
I had a friend that was involved with the Drug Enforcement Administration, and he came home and, with his own war stories. And it interested me in law enforcement. And so after I finished at Calvin, I went down to Michigan State and got a master's degree in police administration, and then spent 3 years in the Army and came back and began my law enforcement career.
So in the FBI, there's some highly trained units that were assembled. And you were part of that first highly trained unit, weren't you?
I was. That was really after the incident at Wounded Knee in South Dakota, which was in 1973.
Which was a hostage situation, correct?
It was a hostage barricade situation with the American Indian Movement. It went on for about 50 days, and it was very frustrating for the federal government to respond to it because they really didn't have the resources and the properly trained individuals to deal with that kind of a long-term incident. And so after that, they created really the one component of crisis management, which was the SWAT team. And in the late 70s, and so the mid to late 70s, and so that's when that started. And then shortly after that, the hostage negotiators were added as a resource to crisis management.
And you were part of a SWAT team and the hostage negotiator team.
Yes, I originally started out as a member of the SWAT team, and then took on additional duties really as the coordinator for the hostage team.
What did you like better?
Well, they each provide their own satisfaction. I think they're you know, basically the goal of each is to resolve an incident without further violence, and some people mistake that, and they think the SWAT team is there to exercise some kind of tactical option, and they are.
Okay, I think that that's our first main point right there. What the man just said is that the job of the hostage negotiation team is to resolve an incident without violence. What do they want to do here while they're trying to take our guns away? They want to get your guns without violence. Now, granted, they will use all the violence they need in staged false flag attacks. They'll shoot up a school, play it up in the headlines, and say, see, we told you, we need your guns. But they don't want you getting violent. And that's why you'll see some incidents that get major media coverage. And another shooting incident, we never hear of it. You'll see a story on the internet and you'll be like, why aren't they talking about this shooting in the news? So it's because they didn't do it. They're not using that for propaganda. They have to know ahead of time in order to have everybody lined up and on the same page to cover it. But they want to resolve this without any real legitimate violence. Let's back up a couple seconds and we'll play that again.
And the hostage negotiator team.
Yes, I originally started out as a member of the SWAT team and then took on additional duties really as the coordinator for the hostage team.
What did you like better?
Well, they each provide their own satisfaction. I think they're you know, basically the goal of each is to resolve an incident without further violence, and some people mistake that, and they think the SWAT team is there to exercise some kind of tactical option, and they are if necessary. But we really all want to walk away from it without any additional violence, and so you've got to appreciate what's going on.
So you have to save lives.
Oh, exactly. That's the business, and with an organized response, with everybody having well-defined roles. We found that we were very successful doing that. Eventually, the FBI created a super SWAT, which we call the Hostage Rescue Team, and they also created a Crisis Incident Negotiation Team, a CINT team, which was a group of about 30 negotiators that they drew from around the states and put together as kind of a flying squad to respond to long-term and complex incidents.
And you would go all over. I mean, you would get the phone call, and they'd say, what, go up to Washington State, go over to the Cuban prison riots.
That's right.
You could go anywhere, right?
Yes.
On a dime.
On a dime.
Right. And so what did you say to your family?
Well, the first thing I would do is beg forgiveness of my wife, Robin, because I always seemed to leave her when the car needed tires or the plumbing went out in the bathroom or something. There was always some kind of crisis that happened when I was gone.
But this is a high service. You saw this as high service. These were high-stakes incidents, and you were going to have really personal sacrifice in order to be involved.
Yes.
And your family had personal sacrifice to be involved.
They did. And my career has significant impact on my family. But I think that it's something that is characteristic of the FBI and FBI agents today, and you find that in the wake of 9/11, is just a tremendous dedication on the part of FBI personnel. They love the job. They come into the job, they give up high-paying jobs, higher-paying jobs to come in and be an FBI agent.
Well, there's
very competitive.
Competitive, want to win, and high adrenaline, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Isn't that because you don't get high pay? So when I read in your book, it's a lot about getting credit for a job well done.
Well, the personal satisfaction is immense.
Right.
And especially with a hostage situation, and especially as a negotiator, when you talk to somebody that's threatening to kill somebody, he's pointing a gun at their head and threatening to kill somebody for hours at a time.
Right.
And you establish that connection, and you establish that trust on his part, and he realizes that he is being listened to, and that you're sincere and genuine, and he says, "Okay, I'm coming out." It's an incredible high. It's just incredibly euphoric.
Yes. Now, why do people take hostages?
A lot of people don't cope as well as we would like them to, and a lot of people deal with situations that they don't feel like they're getting the attention or they're being heard. And a lot of hostage takers simply want to be heard. If they wanted to commit a crime, if they wanted to hurt somebody, they could do that before the police or before the FBI arrived.
Right.
What they want to do is they want to hold them hostage as some kind of having some kind of value, and they want to tell the story. They want to get the story out. They want to have somebody listen to them. And it can be any number of things, whether it's a domestic situation, an interrupted crime, a terrorist group that has a manifesto they want to read on the air. There's just a million different reasons that people take hostages, but the basic reason is they want to tell you something.
They want attention, either to for a cause, that's the manifesto piece, or maybe just to say, I'm valuable, watch me, look at me.
Okay, I think this is another absolutely crucial point, and I'm going to back it up a little bit, but you notice what he's saying is a lot of the hostage takers simply want to be heard. In other words, had the media been doing its job and covering what was going on in the SLA, Sudanese Liberation Army, had the mainstream media been covering that from both sides, they wouldn't have maybe taken Patty Hearst hostage. I don't know what the specifics of that is, but if the media was covering everything, Ted Kaczynski wouldn't have to blow people up and then put his manifesto in the newspaper. People would already know the things that were in his manifesto, which, by the way, are quite interesting. And so you have the New World Order controlled press, media, blocking people's access to so much information, important information, from so many sources, that people are willing to take a hostage just to get information out. What does that say about the media? I mean, I think all the time there should be a channel that you turn to that explains how the banking system works, explains how to fill out certain forms for the government or whatever. All the information, when you have over 100 channels, I mean, come on. Everything should be there at the tip of your fingers. But it's all blocked. It's all buried.
It's an incredible high. It's just incredibly euphoric.
Yes. Now, why do people take hostages?
A lot of people don't cope as well as we would like them to, and a lot of people deal with situations that they don't feel like they're getting the attention or they're being heard. And a lot of hostage takers simply want to be heard. If they wanted to commit a crime, if they wanted to hurt somebody, they could do that before the police or before the FBI arrived.
Right.
What they want to do is they want to hold them hostage as some kind of having some kind of value, and they want to tell the story. They want to get the story out. They want to have somebody listen to them. And it can be any number of things, whether it's a domestic situation, an interrupted crime, a terrorist group that has a manifesto they want to read on the air. There's just a million different reasons that people take hostages, but the basic reason is they want to tell you something.
They want attention, either to for a cause, that's the manifesto piece, or maybe just to say, I'm valuable, watch me, look at me, care about me.
Or I have something that I think is important and the rest of the world is not interested in. We had an incident in Los Angeles years ago where a hostage taker took a building manager hostage on the roof of a downtown office building and insisted that the negotiators bring the media to the scene and film him making a statement that smoking is harmful to your health.
Oh, boy. Boy. Well,
it's
true, but I don't know if you take a hostage for that.
But once he did that, and once it was completed, and he was assured that it would be shown on the news, he surrendered and released the hostage and surrendered, and it was over.
Okay, so you have to be a mind reader, a counselor, priest, pastor, because you have to figure out what motivates these people fairly quickly, don't you?
Certainly. And the first question a negotiator asks himself is, why is this happening?
Okay.
And even driving to the scene, flying to the scene, whatever it may be, the question is always, why is this happening? And the clues to that are, number one, the location. Is it an IRS office? Is it an apartment complex? Is it in a residential home? All of those are clues. Is it in a school? They're kind of a unique situation because schools and kids are very, very dynamic, right. And that's a whole different subject. But The location is very important. The demands are very important, and the threats are important. Is he demanding something unrealistic? Right. Is he, for example, we had one in Los Angeles where this guy took over a bank, and he wanted the president of the United States to fly to Hollywood in Air Force One and to come to the bank and to upgrade his bad conduct discharge to an honorable discharge, which the reasonable person would find somewhat unrealistic.
Correct.
And so it's a clue as to what kind of person you're dealing with.
So how did you deal with him? How did you get that person to say, hey, maybe we can accomplish that? And did you have to overpromise? Like, as a negotiator, did you ever have to promise things that you really couldn't deliver on?
Well, that's certainly an issue that we try to stay away from, because the connection made between the negotiator and the hostage taker is what is going to resolve the incident. It's not magic and mirrors. It's not saying the magic word and having him say, well, that's it, you've convinced me. It's a relationship of trust. And once that's established, you can gradually, with a rational and reasonable individual, convince him that what he's doing is going to be a dead end eventually, and that this needs to be resolved in that way. But when you deal with mentally disturbed people, you really can't control that. And this guy was mentally disturbed. He was somewhat
in the bank situation.
In the bank situation. And he'd had a long history of drug use. And so when you're dealing with somebody like that, they're very sporadic, and you really don't know how things are going to go, because you can't go down a logical, reasonable road with them. You've got to kind of deal with it as it happened. And with him, the negotiator did establish a relationship with him. And eventually he said, you know, those people in the bank, they don't really belong to you. They're Bank of America customers. And Bank of America is concerned about those people. And the hostage taker said to the negotiator, he said, "You're right, Jack." He says, "You're right." He said, "I'm going to let them out." And at that point, he stood up and said, "Okay, you can all go." And they went out like a prison escape.
They couldn't believe it, probably.
No, of course they couldn't, and neither could we. And that was it. And then he was in there by himself, and he talked with the negotiator for a little while, and he agreed to let him talk to the media. And afterwards, he surrendered, and afterwards he came out, and we gave him about a 15-second opportunity to talk to the media. That was it, but it was resolved without violence. So there are times when you do have to promise things that are dubious, but you certainly don't want to lie to them if at all possible. That's just because it goes to your credibility. So it's much easier and a much better way to go is just simply say, I don't know if we can do that.
Right. So how do you know when they're going to act on a violent threat, which has to be happening throughout these conversations, this roller coaster?
You really don't, and that's where just your experience kicks in. And a critical part of the crisis management business is for the on-scene commander to listen to the negotiators. Now, he's got a tactical element there ready to make an entry.
This is the SWAT team or whatever, yeah.
That, if necessary, can go in there and exercise a lethal option with a hostage taker. But you don't want to do that. It's only as a last resort. And so normally the on-scene commander would say to the negotiator, what do you think? Now, he's making these threats. He's giving deadlines. He may fire the gun off in the background. He may get a hostage to scream on the telephone. All these are designed to increase your anxiety and your frustration and your feeling that I've got to comply with his demands, and you've just got to ride that horse. And it can be very, very stressful for a negotiator, and it's just part of the job. And that's why we train in very realistic situations to put people in very stressful positions, because you have to deal with that, and you have to accept the fact that he may be making threats, he may be injuring hostages, but you've got to stick with your procedures. Try to build that relationship with him, and try to convince him that this is not the way to go.
So David Koresh in the Waco, Texas incident.
Yes.
So a lot of times they do result in a successful release, and there's less bloodshed. But in that particular case, we know that there was a sort of an inferno. David Koresh was completely unstable, and the cult members were very much at his beck and call and under his authority and command. So when you look at that incident where there was a decision to go in, what kind of evaluation did your team make after that incident?
Well, there really wasn't a decision to go in.
There wasn't.
The decision was made to put gas into the location, right. But they never intended to make actual entry into the compound. And they told them that. They told them that the day before, and said, tomorrow we're going to put gas into the compound. We want you to come out ahead of that, and we're going to give you 12 hours because we're going to start tomorrow morning. We want you to come out. We want you to bring the children. This has gone on long enough.
And how many days into this whole siege?
This was 51 days.
Yeah, right.
And Koresh had been working on his interpretation of the 7 seals in Revelations, and he had completed his written explanation of seal number 1 at the end of
51 days.
Yeah, and at that point, the negotiators, and I think the crisis management team felt that this has gone on long enough. We're going to have to stimulate some kind of activity in his part. We don't want to go in there and hurt anybody. We don't want to go in there and shoot anybody. We have a lot of kids in there, but the living conditions were deplorable. They were completely under his control. He was a very traditional and very successful cult leader. Right. And as we talked to people through the 51 days, we would say, you know, are you willing to come out? Would you like to come out? And they would say, yes, but I have to talk to David first. And after they would talk to David, sometimes they'd come back, sometimes they wouldn't, but they wouldn't come out. And he would convince them not to come out. So we gave them a lot of warning ahead of time, saying, you know, we're going to do this, but we are not going to make entry. And so the next morning, their answer to that was when the vehicles that were brought up to put the gas and insert the gas, they threw the hostage phone out the front door and slammed the door. And it was like, now what do we do? So we moved the negotiator at that point, the primary, Byron Sage, was moved up to the front of the compound, and at that point began to bullhorn them.
Which is huge personal risk for that negotiator.
Huge personal risk. And trying to make this connection and trying to get them out and trying to rely on the parents to exercise that concern for their kids and release the kids. And it just didn't happen.
Did you ever think in that situation, deplorable situation as it was, these people had made a commitment, there was some sexual abuse, it appeared, going on in that compound. Did you ever think, look, we're not going to be able to move this forward. Let's just all back up and go home and try a different tack?
Well, we couldn't leave.
Why couldn't you leave?
We couldn't leave because 4 ATF agents had been killed. Oh. About 10 had been wounded in the initial shooting that Friday morning when they first made the approach to the building and the entry. Right. We also had a number of people that were killed inside. So we had a federal crime. We had assault on a federal officer, and we had federal officers killed. So we couldn't leave that one. But that's an interesting point, and that there are situations, and they sometimes occur in a domestic situation where mom and dad will get in a fight, an argument, and it's usually fueled by alcohol or drugs, and mom runs outside and says, you know, he's been beating on me, and he's got a gun, and the cops arrive. They call 911. The cops arrive, and they try to talk to him. He's got no one inside. He's not threatening anybody. He's not holding anybody hostage. He says, this is my house. I haven't done anything except get in an argument with my wife. Go away.
Right.
And the question you have to answer is this a threat to community safety? Right. Does he still pose a threat now? If he's got a gun and he's shooting out through the front door, the windows, which happens occasionally, he does pose a threat to community safety. And so you've got to stay with it, and you're going to have to work that out. But there are situations where you may be able to walk away from it. Waco was just not one of them. It was much too complex. Okay. The stakes were too high.
So how does the FBI care for this whole team who has been working towards a peaceful resolution, hoping that happens, and then sees this inferno of these buildings? Is there a way, do you get psychological counseling? Is there time off? Is there crisis, post-traumatic stress kind of crisis care? Does the government do that for their officers?
We would typically debrief every incident. Okay. Both the SWAT team and the negotiators would debrief. And immediately afterwards, you lose a lot of honesty by saying, let's come in tomorrow morning and we'll talk about what happened yesterday.
Right.
You lose a lot of honesty, and you can never recapture it. So we would always debrief, no matter how long it had gone and what day, what time of the day or night it was. We'd go back to the office and sit right then and talk what happened. And we'd also debrief with the SWAT team and say, we like the way you did this, we didn't like the way you did it. What you did here hampered us. With Waco, which was just so almost global in nature, it was a tremendous crisis. And what happened after the end of of 51 days was exactly what we had tried to prevent for 51 days, and people were really hurting. And so the FBI had a conference back at Quantico, the FBI Academy, and brought back anybody that was in Waco and wanted to come back could attend. And they did have a very large-scale psychological debriefing, hoping that they would prevent PTSD in the future. And they broke down, they started with the initial group of several hundred people. I mean, we had, I think there were, the estimates were, and I think they're in the book there, about 250 law enforcement personnel a day were committed to Waco. It's tremendous, huge cost and resources, what have you. But they brought all these people back, and they did this as a group, and then they broke them down into the SWAT guys and the negotiators and the pilots and the tech people and all the different people that were involved in it, and debriefed separately because they knew of the significance. And
what did you learn from that situation?
the next one that happens, the FBI is going to spend a little more time negotiating. They're not going to take that aggressive action, which CORE is considered intrusive with the gas, and we misread him, and it turned out to be exactly what he wanted, which was his personal Armageddon.
And there is this turf war that would come up with these kinds of incidents. Wasn't there? I mean, who was in charge was an issue, wasn't it?
Well, there was, and historically, SWAT teams preceded crisis negotiators, and so for a long time, SWAT teams would drive decision-making at the scene. And that was an issue because, and I liken it to, if the only thing you've got in your hand is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. and so, you know, initially in the 70s and the early 80s, there was a strong presence of tactical personnel at hostage and barricaded situations. Over time, that turned and that changed. And the important thing was that for the negotiators to develop the same, to be able to sit at the table just like the SWAT team.
An equal partner in decision-making.
Equal partnership. And the key for that was to have the on-scene commander recognize that I've got these resources out there and I've got to use each appropriately. And when negotiation began to be successful, success created success. And when they saw that it worked, in essence, negotiators created for law enforcement a new paradigm.
Okay, now this is very applicable to what we're talking about because, as you see, he's explaining how they came to recognize the importance of the hostage negotiation team. And rather than just have their guns, their brute force, that like they did in the past, this is extremely applicable to what's going on right now, where rather than just going door to door and rounding up the guns, they're engaging in all kinds of psychological operations in order to talk the American people into giving up their rights, in order to trick or deceive the American people into laying down their guns. And they have people lining up in lines, handing over their guns for some $200 gift certificate. And it'll work on a lot of them. It won't work on all of us, but it'll work on a lot of them. So you can see how they're trying to use all the tools at their disposal in order to disarm the public. And it's a direct correlation to what he's talking about here with the hostage negotiation. I'll back it up for just a few moments.
And the important thing was that for the negotiators to develop the same, to be able to sit at the table just like the SWAT team.
An equal partner in decision-making.
Equal partnership. And the key for that was to have the on-scene commander recognize that I've got these resources out there and I've got to use each appropriately. And when negotiation began to be successful, success created success. And when they saw that it worked, in essence, negotiators created for law enforcement a new paradigm that you needed to try this first because in the past it's worked. And it became less costly, which really drew the attention of the managers, the crisis managers. It's cheaper to negotiate than to use any kind of violence or force. And so that caught their attention, and they thought, well, listen, we've got to pay attention to this. You always end up paying money if you hurt anybody, if you kill anybody. You're going to be sued, and it's going to cost you money, so we got to do this first. And
Now, this also is a direct correlation where he's saying it's cheaper to talk the hostage taker down than it is to use any kind of force. And what we see increasingly with the way the people are controlled is that it's done through psychological operations. And you could even bring the engineered revolutions into this, and that it is cheaper to deceive people into overthrowing their own government than to go in with force and overthrow the government. It also avoids the litigation in that nations can sue nations. There's even a world court. But if a revolution is engineered secretly, and it is the people that overthrow their own government because they were deceived in doing so, who are they going to sue? Direct parallels.
So if you don't try to use your crisis negotiators first, and you go right to a tactical option, and it's hard to back up on that. When your SWAT team is taking a sniper shot at a guy that missed, right, it's hard as a negotiator to tell the subject,
don't worry,
I'm here to help.
Yeah, you have played that card.
Yes.
So you've talked a little bit about what happens with a trial or police tactics. When you read your book, you could feel the high risk, the tension, that there's a lot at stake here. And so there's got to be trust between members of the team.
Yes.
And there also has to be an adherence to sort of the rule of law. And you can't, in these high-risk situations, sometimes behavior, you probably saw as an FBI agent, you write about it in your book, behavior that fell a little short of some of that way in which you treat people that you were arresting. We watched programs like Law and Order, and you'll see the character, take him by the throat, and you go, oh, I hope that really doesn't happen. But there is a story, a couple stories. You had a story about Ralph, who's trying to push a guy out of the back seat of a cruiser, and you're driving,
yes,
and he's angry at these felons that he has picked up, these fugitives. Now, what kinds of thoughts were going through your head? You're not participating in that. You're driving the car. You're seeing your partner here act in ways that are not correct.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Well, I mean, my immediate reaction was I couldn't believe what was happening.
Right.
But sometimes, people act inappropriately, and it certainly was. I think the part of it's the relief that it's over, that we had captured this guy. He was wanted for murder up in Washington. It was, I think, the closest I had come to ever shooting somebody and not shooting somebody.
Adrenaline.
And the adrenaline is just immense. And I think the relief of finally, having him in custody, he's no longer going to hurt anybody, was part of it. But it was certainly inappropriate behavior, and that happens. It just does. It's unfortunate, but in the business, there's a lot of violence in policing that people really don't see or understand, and until you've been up close or been involved, and it's unfortunate, but it's not always a clean job, and cops are human, and they can sometimes step over the line, and it happens.
But you didn't write him up. Maybe he should have lost his job.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so, no.
The story is over the top, where he is terrorizing the fugitives. Now, there are times I'm sure you felt that they deserved every bit of terror that they got, but you guys are the police officers. You guys are the FBI. Didn't those fugitives deserve better, even if they were crummy people who had done horrible things?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's a hard call, isn't it, Jim?
It is.
Because you know all the pressures that you guys are under. And you know that 95% of the time you are doing an excellent job, and a job no one else wants to do, but everybody wants done. And then someone crosses the line, and do they lose a whole lifetime of good work for crossing the line? That's got to be hard.
It is difficult.
Yeah. Today, we have Homeland Security. Now, is there a crisis negotiating team still?
Yes.
There is.
There is, and it's probably more active than when the FBI put together this flying squad of negotiators, the Crisis Incident Negotiation Team, in '85. And the impetus was we needed some people that we could readily call on to run and jump. Interestingly, we went back to Quantico for a week, and that Friday we had TWA 847 hijacked, and it went on for, if you recall, a couple of weeks and flew all around the Mideast, and it was just kind of like, okay, this is what we do. But they've become much more active in overseas hostage recovery situations, and more so than anything.
It's a global problem.
It is a global problem. And 9/11 completely destroyed our innocence. Prior to that, we always felt that Americans are at risk overseas, but we felt reasonably safe here in America. We have good law enforcement. Right. Our infrastructure is sound. We have intelligence gathering agencies. We got along with the CIA, probably not as good as we should have, but we got along with them.
Right.
And then 9/11 happened, and 9/11 taught us that we're never going to be safe again. These people, hate us. They're going to try to kill us. Right. They are global in nature. They train over there. They come back here. We have to worry about self-starting cells over here. We have to worry about people that are trained over there come back as a mole now over here.
Right.
And so our lives have changed. And as a result of that, the FBI has put together joint terrorism task forces around the country. We're holding hands with the CIA like we never have before.
Which is really one of the impetuses for bringing all the law enforcement together, wasn't it?
Yes.
Do you miss it?
Terribly. I just got old.
You do it all over again?
I do it all over again. I had a wonderful time.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
My guest today has been Jim Botting, author of Bullets, Bombs, and Fast Talk, 25 years of FBI war stories. I'm Shirley Hoek.
Well, we kind of stumbled onto that video, but I'm glad that we did. And a few of his closing points there, I think, were absolutely crucial. And as any anti-New World Order activist understands, it is the CIA orchestrating the terrorists. And he readily admitted there that after 9/11, they are, quote unquote, holding hands with the CIA, and they're glad that they are. In other words, the CIA has overseen all of the terrorist operations, and it's interesting that in 1985, I think he said, they created this organization to fly all around the world and handle terrorist crisis. In other words, if you're going to commit a crime, you have to control the evidence. And what evidence are we talking about? Well, if there's a hostage crisis, you have to control the people who hear what the hostage says. I mean, we all know too well about the, what was he, a Somalian, the underwear bomber who was put on the plane by government operatives, had a deliberately failed bomb go off in his underwear. And as Kurt Haskell testified, somebody else was on the airplane filming him before it went off. Of course, they'll pick somebody that doesn't even speak English. This video really could be used as evidence for how our government, controlled by the New World Order, created ahead of time a team of people to control the evidence from all of their false flag operations, including 9/11. But we're covering this tonight because we're trying to look at parallels between hostage negotiation and your government, controlled by the New World Order, trying to disarm the population. In other words, America put down the gun. And I think we were in the process of downloading another video. So let's see if this one exposes Stockholm Syndrome and the Love Police. I'll try to find time to prepare before I go live, but things have been pretty hectic lately.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Hug Police. Anyone found to not be loving and helpful and a human being will be arrested by the Hug Police. Thank you.
No fear.
Okay, this is making me sick. Let me just see if they show them hugging the police. Again, I'm not seeing it. What did they do? Remove all the videos of them hugging the police once I exposed it as Stockholm Syndrome? Is that what they did? Because that's what it looks like to me. Before, they had hundreds of videos on there hugging the police. Then I exposed it as Stockholm Syndrome, and now they're gone. Whatever. So, looking how to negotiate like a hostage negotiator. Did we look at that one yet? No, we didn't. Here it is.
I'm George Kohlreiser. I'm professor of leadership at IMD in Lausanne, Switzerland, and hostage negotiator, and author of a book, Hostage at the Table: How Leaders Can Influence Others, Raise Performance. Well, good negotiators have to be able to create a strong enough relationship with the people they're dealing with, even if they don't like them, to forge a bond, and through that relationship separate out the person from the problem, and then be able to focus on common goals as well as self-interest, interests of the other, and then to bring this to a conclusion through concession making to be able to move forward where there is a mutual gain on both parties. The problem with many negotiations is that the conflict spills over, that it breaks the relationship, or the focus becomes not on the problem but on the persons, and you reach all kind of barriers or even deadlocks in negotiations. Using techniques from the world of hostage negotiation can easily help break through almost all of those barriers. You have to sincerely and honestly be interested in that person, even if you don't naturally like them.
Okay, now again, we're looking for parallels between hostage negotiation and how your government is treating you. So it talks about looking for bonds with the person. And people can remember when your current dictator, Obama, was running for president, people literally passing out, fainting at the events. These are the kinds of ways that they create bonds with the people. Also, there is the payoffs, you know, the Obama phone, all this kind of stuff. This is your hostage taker creating a bond with you and engendering Stockholm Syndrome.
You must remember that they are not the problem. Show interest, use inquiry and questions to understand what it is they want, understand what their pain may be that motivates them to resist the negotiation or to continue to provoke the conflict. And as in any hostage situation, you cannot let yourself feel helpless. You have to be able to reach out, engage, and find out what the other person wants and use influencing and persuasion techniques to get them to come over to a common goal, make concessions, and find an outcome. In any good hostage negotiation, the first thing the hostage negotiator has to do is create that relationship, and through the dialogue process and influencing process, persuade the hostage taker to give up their weapons, give up their hostages, come out, even knowing they're going to go to prison. And the interesting thing is that it's successful in 95% of the time. Hostage negotiators, as an art and a science, are able to deliver such a high result. Leaders don't come near to that level of effectiveness, and for HR especially, it's important for them to understand they have not only the role of being mediators, but also of modeling this behavior of being able to influence and persuade and get people to collaborate. And with this, you have then inspired, engaged work teams which are going to deliver the highest result.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it here for a moment because there's something we need to look at. And I remember presenting this on another broadcast, but if you look at, we'll go to Google, you heard what he said. You have to be able to influence and persuade. Army PSYOP patch. Go to images. And persuasions, you see it right there, persuasions. Boom. Let me move this over. This is the patch for Army Psychological Operations Specialist. Persuade, change, influence. That's what you just heard him say. So, as the New World Order has come to understand how they can manipulate people through the psychology, they've rolled it out in the military in order to engineer revolutions around the world. They've rolled it out in the police force in order to successfully end hostage negotiations. And they've rolled it out in politics. They've rolled it out in politics in order to control the populations. This is what's going on. Anyway, let's get back to where we were.
Yes, just like anybody can be a good leader. The research shows it is not genetics. It's in the wiring of the brain. It's modeling those people who know how to do it, becoming an expert in your own authentic way by adding your part to it. So what good negotiators have to do is understand the basic principles. Practice, 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 as in sports, as in music, until you fine-tune those skills that you become an expert in the dialogue process, expert in reaching out and creating these bonds, experts in looking for how to build common goals that are strong enough to carry you through all the differences. Good conflict management is the art and the skill of influencing and persuasion, and understanding that there are always ways to build a bridge.
Okay, so what we have there point blank is somebody involved in hostage negotiations explaining it. And it's not difficult to see how they're trying to build a bridge to get your guns. And they're using the mainstream media and psychological manipulation in order to make you think, well, we should give up the guns. Fortunately, they seem to be failing on all fronts. The problem we have is it doesn't matter whether the people agree that they should give up their guns or not. They'll still put out on the television, 74% of the population thinks that America should go ahead and give up their guns. It doesn't matter what the Americans really think. They'll just lie on television and say you think something you don't think. And then they're so stupid, they'll change their mind because they want to be with the majority. Anyway, I've told you their goal, I believe, is mental health screening anyway. They're not going to get our guns because they can't take them. They don't have enough hostage negotiators to try and take away our guns. Look, I've been in 2 standoffs myself. And in both of them, I got my guns back later. They always take all your guns. They search your house and take all your guns. And then when they have to drop all the charges, they give you the guns back. That's just the way that it is. They wrap them up for you, too. And then you get to open them back up like it's Christmas. It's hilarious. So in this broadcast, we attempted to look at correlations between hostage negotiations. And I'm trying to explain what I'm really trying to get at here. And I know I've done a really bad job with this broadcast. But to look at how one person is negotiated with during a hostage negotiation and compare it to how the entire nation is now being negotiated with through the mainstream media by its government controlled by the New World Order in order to get you to lay down your guns. And they're not going to be able to come after your guns, but they can convince people to turn them in. And one of the problems I have with these gun turn-in programs or whatever is they say, no questions asked. What that says to a criminal is if you know somebody who has a gun, go steal it and turn it in. So somebody could break into my house, steal my guns, and turn them in, and the police wouldn't even ask any questions, which is pretty unbelievable. Although I did read one story where the police did check the guns and return them if they were stolen. And some people were saying that's hilarious or that defeats the whole purpose. And in another story, people are starting to pop up at these gun buyback programs and buy the guns themselves. I very much encourage that. I believe that we need to keep the guns and that the gun's transferring from lowlifes who, would rather just have a little bit of money to people who want to keep them, take care of them, and have them in case they need them is a good thing. But don't give them to the government. All right, I don't really have anything prepared for tonight. I didn't when I started the show. So being uncaffeinated, not having prepared a broadcast, having focused on the main points I wanted to get to, I think we might be ready to go ahead and wrap it up. The question is, did I already cover these things here? Maybe we'll play this one more time just for posterity, but I'm afraid I might get a copyright hit on it. I'm starting to have trouble with the channel, so I don't know if it's a good idea or not. Let's go ahead, play a song, roll out with a little bit more in psychiatry so people can really understand the points that I'm trying to make here. And then I will be out for the night. Death to the New World Order.
We know about you. We know what you're doing. We are fostering a great awakening. We know the courts will never bring justice. We know you control the entire government. And just as you tell us your intentions before carrying out your evil plans, we are going to let you in on a little secret. As much as you would like us to be, we are not afraid. We will not be controlled by your social conditioning. We have awakened, and we are coming for you. We will not follow your controlled opposition. We will not obey your phony friend groups. We see through everything you try to do. You will never achieve godhood as long as even just one of us stands up to refute your false claim to rule the masses. And you can never kill us all. We would like to thank all who tune in, and especially all who bring others to the network so that we can unplug them from the false reality. Let's face it, we're all going to die sooner or later, and it does us no good if we have not spread truth to those who remain behind, so please, bring in as many as you can. Remember, you can show people how to tune in on their cell phones by searching their internet radio application for TBN. The letters TBN are obviously an abbreviation for Truth Broadcast Network and have no other meaning. We do not want to be perceived as anyone else lest our audience be misled. Truth Broadcast Network would especially like to thank its tireless broadcasters who sacrifice their time, energy and resources working against the enemy. Broadcasters generally have to deal with the ignorance of those around them in their daily life. There is a price to pay for their selfless efforts enlightening the world. Thus we thank broadcasters, and ask the audience to be supportive by spreading the word about the live broadcasts and spreading the archives as much as possible. Truth Broadcast Network is not responsible for the content of independent broadcasters. We are a loose affiliation of activists bonded together by a common struggle. As such, the network is here to act as a central hub for truth activism. The network is here to aid both those creating content and those searching for it. All broadcasters act independently and they connect through the network. Broadcasters have no control over the network and the network has no control over them. There is no liability on the part of any broadcaster for any action or statement that is not their own. Truth Broadcast Network may contain copyrighted material, the use of which has not always been specifically authorized by the copyright owner. We make this available in our efforts to advance understanding of criminal justice, political, human rights, economic, scientific, and social justice issues. This constitutes a fair use of any such copyrighted material as provided for in Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Law. In accordance with Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, the material on this site is distributed without profit to those who have expressed a prior interest in receiving the information. Visiting Truth Broadcast Network or another Truth website containing material generated on or through Truth Broadcast Network constitutes expressing interest in our information. If you wish to use copyrighted material from the site for purposes of your own that go beyond fair use, you must obtain permission from the copyright owner. That said, our broadcasters want their material spread like a fucking virus. So click share, download, copy, embed, upload, do whatever it takes. Start now, do it every day. You're listening to Truth Broadcast Network, where the truth will set you free.